Hi there, how's everybody doing? I'm having a pretty good summer. I hope you guys are enjoying your summer. I am coloring in Tales from the Witch's Cottage, and I've had some interest from some subscribers about backgrounds. So when I did a flip through of this to start with, I showed you a few backgrounds that I had done, mostly with Inktense. And I've got several others in the works. Nothing spectacular yet here. Let's see. But I'm working on quite a few. So I wanted to talk about how I figure out backgrounds and a little bit of a hack that you can do with tracing paper and hopefully help you brainstorm past cliche backgrounds into something a little more creative and fun. So I want to show you what I want to do with these couple of pages here. In particular, this one and this one. And they are very similar. Basically just the little witch here with her broom silhouetted. So I'm going to try a couple different things with tracing paper and show you how easy it can be. So let's get started. So first thing, I'm going to cover this. This is a little distracting. So that'll help us. And then if you have tracing paper, it makes this a lot simpler. So tracing paper is, pretty cheap. You can usually find it at, Walmart, Michael's, places like that. And just get a pad of tracing paper. These are cut from a bigger pad of tracing paper, but I just want to show you how to transfer something. So, for example, if I wanted to, let me find, what should I do? If I wanted to transfer something into this picture, like maybe one of her butterflies or something. If I wanted to transfer something and I wasn't confident in drawing it, or maybe even the flowers. So we could do the flowers. Well, mushroom, there we go, mushroom. Okay, so if I wanted to put one of these mushrooms in the picture here, and I wasn't real confident in drawing it, plus it's actually time consuming. I mean, I could draw this, but it would take a lot of time, and I wanted to save time. Or I could put one of her ghosts. First thing I would do is trace it. Let's see, which one do I want to do? I think I'll just do this little mushroom here, and that'll, with this one. Yeah, and that'll help you see how to do this. So I'm going to trace it first. Maybe trace it with ink. I'll trace it with ink. You could trace it with pencil. I'm going to trace it with ink. That way it's easier for you to see what I'm doing. And also, once I start to transfer, I'm going to use pencil to smudge on the back of this. And it'll be easier to tell what's in the foreground and what's in the actual trace. So here I'm just going to trace this real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay. Oh, there's my little mushroom. Okay, so I have my little mushroom traced. This is a Copic fineliner. I want something that's not going to smudge on me. That's okay. So there's my little mushroom, and I'm going to kind of just lay this over and see where I would like this. I could use it more than once. You could also flip it and use it the other direction. Maybe they're harvesting their crystal mushrooms here. Or I can even add another one in here. There we go. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take pencil, and an ebony pencil or a woodless pencil or any very smeary, smudgy pencil will work well for this. So I don't have woodless pencil right here, so I'm just going to use this. This is Blackwing, and you want to do this on a separate piece of paper because you don't want to get something transferred by mistake where you don't want it. So I actually forget which is the front. Okay, that's the way it goes. So I'm going to flip it over, and I am going to shade my smudgy pencil. Now you can do it just where the lines are, or you could just go like this. Just make sure you have smudgy pencil anywhere that you have lines you want to transfer. So what you're going to be transferring onto the paper is pencil. There we go. That's easier. It's faster. Smudgy pencil. You can use this more than once. Once you've transferred it, you're going to take where your line is going to transfer that smudgy pencil. So you may have to like reapply more smudgy pencil. I love the woodless pencils for this, especially if you're doing something big. It's basically a pencil made out of just it's not lead, the graphite, and that's it. It's a very heavy, dense pencil, but it works great for this, especially when you're doing something big. Okay, that's pretty good. More than needed, actually, but okay. So I'm going to flip it back over. Now, you can't see the design as well. You're seeing that pencil through it. But look, it did transfer a little bit. So you got to be careful where you do this. Over some scrap paper. And I'm going to get either a decent sharp pencil or say a ballpoint pen. I do like to do this with a ballpoint pen so I can, with the color, so that I can, blue, black, red, whatever, so that I can see where I've traced, especially if it's bigger, knowing where you've traced and where you haven't. And I would use some washi tape or painter's tape to hold it in place if it's very big. But I'm going to put it, we may put several. So, where do I want this? All right, so I'm gonna put it right there. I'm not gonna trace it where it overlaps her dress because I actually want it to be behind her. So I'm gonna trace exactly over my lines. I'm gonna trace exactly over my lines, but I'm not gonna trace where her dress is because I want her to be behind it. You could come back and erase it, but I've already colored there. Now, the more accurate you are with this part, the better it's gonna look. So take your time, go slow, tape it in place if you need to, especially if you're gonna leave and come back, like you've done a larger area or a larger scene or something for the background. You would definitely want to tape it in place. And let's see here. And if you've taped it, you can just kind of flip it up. Yeah, if I had taped it, I would be able to flip it up and check. But you can see there, it's transferring nicely. Let me just finish. Oops, that line was a little off. That's okay. This is something you can do if you want to save time from having to draw it, or maybe I wanted 20 of these mushrooms back there. That would really save me time to be able to do this. But you could also trace something else from the book, from the same illustrate. Oops, I don't want to trace there. Shoot, I just wrote it on her dress. I think it'll erase. I'm not too worried. But you could trace something else from the book that you want to put in the background. Now this works if you want to do this with copy paper, it would work. You gotta press really hard because it's thicker paper. But, so let's see how this looks. Gotta be careful not to move it. And the mushroom needs this other stem. Okay, I think I got it all there. Now, I do want to erase where I got it on her dress. Her dress is done in Inktense and it's already been activated, so I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Right. All right, so there's my mushroom. Now, if I wanted to, I could do another one somewhere else, back here maybe. Now, if I did want it to be in front of her dress like this, I could go ahead and trace it. I would need to paint it in with something solid to get rid of the purple, paint pen or something. I don't know if, I guess I'll do, yeah, I'll do another one. So I'll do another one. It goes so quick, it's easy. Apparently we're going to be standing in a field of mushrooms. So I do have some other ideas for the rest of this background. And the other thing is you could trace part of it, and maybe you want the crystals to move or something. You could trace all of it but that, and then alter it just a little bit, draw it in differently so it doesn't look too repetitive. See, now I should have changed pens, because then I can tell where I had, if I changed pen colors, I would know where I had traced it and where I hadn't traced it. Because now that I'm talking, I'm not paying attention to where I traced it. If you miss a line or two, you can always just fill it in. That's not too difficult. All right, I'm gonna hold it still. I'm gonna flip up. Oh, I didn't get any of this top part. Okay. You can kind of tell it's not as heavily traced with the pen. There we go. Let's try this. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right, so now, if you like it all, and that's where you want it, I would take a fine liner and trace over it. Let that dry completely, and I mean completely. And then you can come back and erase your pencil. And then pay attention too to the line work that's already on the page. You don't want to go with something that's like super out of character for the rest of the art on the page. I wouldn't want to use a big Sharpie for this, you know. All right. And then I'm going to trace this one. It is a little harder to see. Had I planned from the beginning, I would not have colored the dress in right there. We'll talk about that in a minute as far as planning purposes. It was definitely an afterthought because I had already started to color her in. And then I realized, you know, if I wanted to do pan pastels or mask her off or anything, I would need to go ahead and do that and not have her fully finished. So I kind of stopped in my tracks. This is difficult to see, but if it changes a little bit, that's fine. I don't want them all to look exactly the same anyway. So I might add a crystal or two extra to this little thing or to the other one, just to make them a little different. All right. Okay, I'm gonna add in course, there's no finish at the bottom here, so I'm gonna have to just draw that in. Okay. All right, so I would definitely have to fill that in with something in order to color that in. All right, so that's how you can transfer something. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you is about the background. So, like for example, I laid this over it and drew in place and drew a moon, some clouds. I thought maybe a galaxy sky and clouds. But you just really need something here. It's such a big space. I mean, if you were journal writing, this would be great space to do that, but I don't really do that in my coloring books, or at least not this one. So you could transfer this, draw it in place. You could move it around and see where you like it. You can flip it, see if you like it better over here, but that kind of defeats the purpose of wanting to fill the space. But if you decided you wanted to use this, you would turn it over, shade the back, and then lay it in place. Trace your lines carefully, and that would transfer for you. So the reason I don't want to use that one, though, I have a couple of other ideas, and I actually think that that would be good for this one. So this one I'm also going to talk about too today. So I really like this idea for this one. So I kind of had that started, like this is kind of going to be clouds and this is going to be galaxy sky. So this would be perfect. Now I would need to move the clouds down and then move the moon up and paint it in with something or acrylic marker. So that would be great for that. So I'm not going to do the same thing on both pages. So I had some other ideas here. So one thing I could do is I traced this cottage from the very beginning. So trace this cottage, trace the cottage, and then I actually turned it to trace the trees because I didn't want them to look like they were on a globe. So I traced it to make the trees look like they were straight up and down. And you could put that right here in the background and it would look like she's standing kind of in front of her cottage. You could put it a little bit behind her and the bird. And then you can kind of fill in a path, maybe some more plants or flowers. I wouldn't put it way down here. Like if you were to put it way down here, you're starting to look like it's more of a bird's eye view, and that's not the perspective you have on them. It's really more of a straight on view. So I would put it a little higher up. It looks a little further away, and then the scale is right. So like down here, it's closer. That's just one of those illusions of depth in drawing. Like if you put something closer down on the planes in the picture, then it's gonna look closer to you. So that's why the cats look so close. They look like they're the closest object because they're at the bottom of the image. So as things go up, they look a little further away. It's just like overlapping position on the page can help tell you or give you the illusion of depth. Like if I were to put it way back here, it looks even further away. But for scale, it probably looks good about right here. And then I would draw it in, not draw it where the feathers are, but just draw it behind it. You could always just erase it after you draw the whole thing. So what I would do is I would take this, I would probably trace it with ink first so I could see it better. Color my smudgy pencil on the back and then lay it in place. And then trace it with either a ballpoint pen or a good sharp pencil and trace every line. And then you would have a transferred image of your house. So what I did, because I wanted something kind of like a magical forest kind of thing, I drew a landscape. Now it doesn't make much sense like this, but I drew it with the paper laying over it. So I drew in some branches up here. And then, let's see, kind of move it around, see where you like it. I actually like the opening, like this is a path. that I want wider to fit them at the bottom, and then it goes narrow as it goes back. I actually kind of want this opening in the trees where you see sky to be a little higher up. Sorry, my dog is asleep. She's dreaming. She's under my desk. So I want this a little higher up actually. So I'm going to move that there. And then when I go to transfer the branches, I'll move it down. You could cut them apart. But this is what I sketched out earlier. So I'm going to kind of finalize that. Put that in ink. I've got some more trees over here that I would probably move over a bit. Where do I want this? So I do want the trees to leave room for that, and I'll probably draw in the top of some trees. All right, so I'm going to center that path where I want it. You don't want any unusual tangents. Like this path ending right at the ear, or her elbow covering just the point of it, or this lining up with the dress. You want to see where everything kind of lines up. No weird tangents that are awkward. That tree kind of gets into the feathers there. I might just barely show that tree. Okay, I like right there. I'm not transferring it yet. I'm just kind of tracing so I can see. And these are just, they're not individual leaves, they're just squiggles. Not as hard as you think. You don't have to draw every leaf, especially when it's far away. And being this skinny, they look a little further away too. Okay, and then some far away foliage. And then when I go to color this, this is going to be more muted than the stuff that's closer. All right, and then my path. I want it to be wide enough to fit them. And then the end of the bushes. More foliage. And then on this side, I don't want it to line up with that ribbon. So I'm going to actually move that down slightly. And add a branch. Needs more branches. This one's too far away. Move that one closer. Squiggly. Okay. Alrighty. So I'm not going to trace these flowers. I don't think they look like her flowers. They were just kind of sketched in. So I will actually look at her flowers a little better from the front, from the cottage view. I like that. Now I want these here, but I'm going to move them closer. So if you need to, you can do a little pencil registration mark. So I'm going to do like a little X and an X in pencil lightly that I can erase later. And then if I trace it right here and right here, you're not going to transfer this again, but that way if I move, I can just line up my little registration marks, and then I've got my drawing right where I want it. So I'm going to draw the top of these trees because I want more sky above it. Kind of make it up. Let's see, it goes behind the bird. Let's go behind her completely. Okay, nice and random enough. And then branches. So right now they're too close to the trees. I am just gonna, you could just trace what I have and then move it when you transfer, but I'm just gonna redraw them. Messy. All right. Just getting some scraggly leaves. Here he is, bunches of leaves. Now, if you want to be more careful and more exact with that, oh, I don't want that touching. I either want it overlapping very definitively, or I want a clear space. So I'm not gonna do that right there. Should have done pencil. And that one needs to go to there. All right, if I wanted a moon, I could draw a moon. Okay, that looks pretty good. So here's what it looks like. It's kind of crazy. And I forgot to trace those right there. Okay, so it was kind of crazy. I didn't worry about tracing that because that's behind her and this part is behind them. So I just traced the part that's gonna need to be transferred. So now I can erase or ignore my pencil lines. It doesn't really matter. I can ignore them easily enough. So I'm gonna turn it over and I'm going to put, well, let's cap that. I'm gonna put pencil on the back. So this is my smudgiest one currently at my desk. So I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna put some paper down because if I were to trace over this, I would actually transfer that tree to this paper. So you just have to be careful what you're on top of here with your layers of papers. Now you could trace this exactly, but if you miss, then that line won't transfer. So I just kind of roughly make sure there's smudgy pencil anywhere that there's a line that I want to transfer. And I may even draw it and not transfer that. I may actually draw it with that brown pen, leaves that look more like Hanna Karlzon's leaves. I kind of forget sometimes. Oh, not my illustration. Hanna Karlzon's illustration. Okay, so now I'm gonna lay this in place so I can line up my little registration marks. If I want to, I could tape it. I was just using my washi tape. Where did it go? Here we go. I'm actually gonna put a little bit of tape here because, okay, so. There we go. So that's enough that I can check it. So like there's nothing to attach to up here. That might move. So I can tape it here. I've got it lined up with my registration marks and I can flip it and check that I got everything. So take my pen and trace my lines. So I added this little bit right here. I didn't want it to end at the tail of the cat because then that kind of gives it a little bit of awkwardness and you can't tell what's overlapping what. So having it overlap behind the cat helps with that depth. Okay, so now, oops, a little right there. Now we will let that dry and then we can erase. Alrighty, so there we go. We now have a much more detailed coloring page. I will have to fill that in, but I'm going to color this in with Inktense. And then now for this one, I do want to point out a couple things. So, let me once again cover this. So I've added washi tape to protect this side, but for the other solution to a background, and these are very similar. If you remember, I have this little sketch. It's simple enough that I don't really need to transfer it, and I actually think I like it this way. So this one, since there's already pencil there, I could just transfer by looking through the drawing. I can just trace it right now, and that would transfer. You could always just kind of, okay, where I want my moon, and trace it, which actually, I think I'll do that. So that I can paint that in. Okay, there's my moon. Clouds I'm gonna do with pan pastel, but I wanted to show you the dramatic difference with this Inktense. If you're not familiar and used to using Inktense pencils, so this is what my picture looks like. Just very scruffily, loosely colored in, and you'll see that I've got some pretty heavy pigment in some of these areas, and I'll even get, let's see, there's a indigo blue, bright blue, where did it go? Deep indigo, here we go. So I actually did a pretty hefty layer where I wanted the darkest. You'll notice with Inktense that it can be hard to get a light layer without having the little pencil strokes. So with Inktense, it's a lot of work on the paper to get it super smooth, and it can tear your paper. It can start to pill up if you work at it too much. Eventually working at it too much, you can come out on the other side. This one's not on the other side, but I like that rough textured look. I actually want this to look hand done. Now I could do pan pastel and get a perfect gradation. However, I like this look, and I'm gonna splatter some stars, and I'm gonna do some pan pastel here. But I just wanted to show you so dramatic of a difference. Like this is, I colored the whole thing the same left and right. And then this is what it looks like activated. I took a water brush. Like you don't even need to get that close when you're coloring with the pencil. You can get in there with the water brush once you have that ink activated. So there's how it looks activated. And I just came in really close with my water brush when I activated it. I will say to be careful, to be careful with the colors, because although these look great up here, I have to be careful right here because I have that yellow, green, and purple right next to each other. And if I were to blend those together, I would get brown. So if they're opposites on the color wheel, they will mix together and get some shade of brown. So when I'm activating this right here with a water brush, I'm going to make sure I wipe off before I get into another color right here. And I'm not going to brush them together. I'm going to kind of keep them separate. You can't even do one color, like do just the yellow, wipe that off, do other work, come back when it's dry and do just the purple, and then they won't bleed into each other. So that's the only caution I'll give you about this. Now here I've colored some white as a test within some of this to help it dissolve and have enough pigment to dissolve, because my one mistake with watercolor pencils a long time ago was that I just didn't put down enough pigment, and that works for Inktense as well. In order to get this hefty, solid, robust background, you do need to put down a lot of pigment. So, well, dye. So I colored this quite heavily. And I really did this rough. This is how rough I did it. And rough and fast, and just, I didn't even get that close. I just, to the edges, I just kind of put the color wherever I wanted it. I colored over my stars because coloring around them is kind of tedious, and I can see them to put whatever I want on them. I can see them, so yeah. So that's how it looks activated after coloring it like that. So I will finish this one as well and show it to you when I'm done. I got one more hack for you, but I want to update you first. So off camera, I have gone ahead and colored in all my Inktense and activated all the Inktense. I have taken Posca and colored this in over all of the lines where these two things overlap. So I drew in the mushroom for my little transfer process with the tracing paper, and then the dress kind of showed through. So to avoid it looking like two things occupying the same space at the same time, I have filled in this with white Posca and then colored over it pretty heavily with the Inktense for that mushroom. So I still need to doctor up a little bit of the crystals. I haven't done all my final details yet and all my little highlights and stuff, so plenty of time for that. But for now, this is all the activated Inktense. I did start to add a couple details. Can't help myself, but I have one more little thing that I want to show you to do with these images with tracing paper. Okay, and then this is our other image that we are working on simultaneously. Now this one, I love how the Inktense looks. I like this rough look. This is one layer. You can go in with a second layer. So what I showed you before was I had only activated the left, but I had all the rough coloring on the right. Now you can go in and kind of even out things where you want. I am tempted to add a little bit of darkness on this side because it looks a little awkward right here. As you can tell, one thing you can't do with Inktense is really lightly color and expect to get a light color. So this is as light as this color goes. Trying to go any lighter just doesn't really work very well for me. I mean, you can probably color it on a palette and use it kind of like watercolor, but Anyhow, I'm trying to conserve and use less water because I tend to make messes when I use a lot of water. You can see right here. Got a little carried away, I think about right here, because I was trying to dissolve the pencil. And you have to scrub just a little bit with the water brush to dissolve it. So I may go back to using my watercolor brushes. The very, very soft watercolor brushes are a little gentler on the paper. And I was concerned about roughing up the paper, and I had to work a little harder to get this to dissolve. And so you can see I got just a tiny bit shadowing through right here. I still hadn't done anything with that background. I'm not concerned at all. I will probably put a window or a shelf or a wall or something behind this, or just darken the shadows behind it. So I don't think that's gonna affect it negatively at all. So I was fortunate for the location. However, for the rest of this, I wanna show you something that I'm gonna do with my tracing paper once again. If I wanted to do a galaxy background here, which I do, sprinkling with like a toothbrush or a paintbrush, the little splatters of white works really, really well for that. I can't do just random dots. It just doesn't work for me. They don't look random. They don't look random enough. But I like the really tiny spray you get when you use like a stiff acrylic brush. So I've got one more trick for you. Now, I know a lot of people would think, all right, let's use masking fluid. And then before the days of like fancy masking fluid, we would use rubber cement. Now that's a big fat brush. You would have to get your own little tiny brush. I do like using these. These two, you need a brush, and I use like an old cheap brush from like the cheap watercolors. I don't use good brushes. And then this actually works very, very well, but it tends after a while to start to get stuck. It has a little needle in here, that a pin that goes in and keeps it from getting clogged, and it works really well for a while. See, I can't even get it back, the lid back on, it's so tiny. Why did I undo that? I'll have to come back to that to put the lid on. But this fineliner resist pen works great. I've used it for lots of things, and it lasts a long time. It does turn blue, so you can see where you're at. But rather than go through all of that, because sometimes it pulls up your image, it's very time consuming. So I'm gonna actually show you something here that is much faster. So I want to block off a large area, because even just blocking off the edges isn't going to help me. I'm not doing a watercolor wash. By splattering, I really need to cover it completely. So I'm going to do a really rough tracing of her, because I just need the dots to not be everywhere. And it's okay if the dots are like not super close to her. I could always add a couple just to make it look like it's, you know, fitting in. So this can actually be kind of rough. Oh, and so I want it, oops, there we go. And I also want clouds down here. So I'm coming in with my pastels. So I'm gonna like draw that basic cloud shape in. So what I can do now is, and you could even make it simpler than that. This is kind of complicated. I may simplify that even further. So I'm gonna cut this out really quick. And I'm probably covering up clouds, so it's probably overkill. Okay, so set my scissors down. So now you'll see, is this backwards? Is that backwards? Is that forwards? No, her hair, that's this way. Okay, and I'm not worried about getting white on the moon. It's white, it's not painted yet. All right, so this is pretty good. So now, I don't think that'll get affected too much. So I now have some white acrylic paint that I have Added a little water because I want this to be very fluid. Actually, it's kind of dried a little bit sitting here. And I do want to test this first because I don't want to go straight to my paper. Sometimes the first time you do this, it's like the first time you use a gel pen, it like splurts and splutters and things like that. I had black paper, where did it go? There it is. So make sure I get this thing going. And I know I'm gonna make a mess, I just know it. You do have to be careful because it'll drip off of your thumb. Maybe I need an even stiffer brush, oh my goodness. You don't want so much extra that it drips. Okay. Yeah, messy. All right. I also don't want it on here. I don't want it everywhere. So I'm gonna move a couple things. I'm gonna block off all that. Block off this. Block off my pencils. Okay. What is that? Oh. Let's see. Okay. So now I think everything's pretty secure. You could tape it in place carefully, but all right. Dab a little off. Okay. Oh, my thumb's giving out. Toothbrush is like the best, but I didn't have any old toothbrushes. I think I let it sit too long and my brush got a little soft. Kind of the harder you flick this, bigger the droplets. Okay, you could also tap it on a brush, on another brush handle. Okay, so there we have it. Another great use for tracing paper. So we have transferring, tracing and reusing from the same book. We have brainstorming and planning and trying stuff out. And then we have adding in your own drawing into a background. And then lastly, you can also use it between your pages. I know that some people have found some less expensive solutions, that the paper packs that you use for like food things, like wax paper and stuff. I like this because I like the clear, like translucency of it. All right, so I'm gonna let that dry and set this down over here. That won't take long to dry. It's acrylic. Acrylic dries pretty fast. Lots of fun. Thank you for joining me. Bye.